Hey y'all, I'm Dan Hamilton, host of the Next Gen Warrior Show. Back in the saddle again here. Hair is a little bit longer. Haven't shaved in a day or so, even though it doesn't really look like it. But today we have a special opportunity to sit down with Justin Bohannon. He's been on the show again. He's the CEO of Make a Vet Sweat. And I am actually going to turn it over to him, and he is going to spend some time interviewing me. So Justin, appreciate you coming on, and hopefully I can give you some good answers and make this a fun conversation.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you thinking about me when it comes to interviewing you. I know this pandemic has gotten a lot of people on the edge, and a lot of things have changed and are different. And I think this segment should be a pretty cool one and pretty fun one, man. So thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Well, when we were in the studio at the Next Gen Warrior Studio downtown Austin, Texas. I felt like we had a great conversation, and I love talking about everything about fitness, mental health, and your organization, Make a Vet Sweat, that really uses fitness to try to combat PTSD. But hey, we're gonna turn the show over to you. You get to ask me the questions this time. So for those everyone who's been in the audience, I appreciate you continuing to support us through this, and I look forward to having a good discussion. And I'll step off the podium and let you grill me for a little bit.
Yeah, please, man. There's not enough room for both of us right here.
But well, as much as you, so I'll step down.
Dude, I've gained a lot of weight since our last interview, by the way. So as we're getting started, since the pandemic started, you now can't be at your office downtown in Austin. Now you're actually working from home. So first question, have you found kind of having a hard time doing an adjustment now working just from home?
Yeah, it's been a little bit of an adjustment. I mean, I would say for people at home who are going through this, and maybe you've experienced it as well, to me, the adapting to the work from home environment is a lot less about the work you do and more the type of person you are. And so I'm an introvert. I love going out and socializing, but I'm very comfortable being at home. I'm comfortable working from home. I like spending time reading and writing and kind of a quiet, atmosphere like home is. And so it's taken me a little bit of time to adjust my work schedule. Like, hey, how do I prioritize my time? But in general, I would say I'm fairly comfortable working at home, even though there are days, and maybe you've experienced it, where I'm like, I got to get out of the house. What am I doing? It just doesn't feel natural. But I just try to have a routine, try to stay healthy mentally, physically. And then even though I know I might not be able to produce the same amount as I would in a natural environment prior to this, I still try to make sure that I have small successes every day to just keep me going and try to keep building on those things.
Yeah, that's actually really, really good. Everything that you just said there. And you're right. It's about what kind of a person you are. For myself, I am extroverted.
Yeah.
I, I like to talk.
Just telling you.
Yeah, that's just me. I like to talk. I like to be around people. I like to shake hands. I like to give big hugs.
Yeah, I know. It's hard though. It's hard because that's how, to take it on a personal level. I know my wife is very extroverted, and so she wants to be around people. She feeds off that energy. And so I think the work from home thing, if you're an introvert, maybe it's a little more natural to you, but if you're not, if you're an extroverted person, then it can be a difficult transition. Maybe that's how it's felt for you.
That's exactly how it's felt for me. Just always wanting to be around people. So it's been a little bit of a struggle for myself, but I'll also add, I have a teenager in the house. So,
oh, do you really?
I've gained a large appreciation for teachers, and I want to tell you right now, I'm all for teachers getting a pay raise. Look, I don't know what this nonsense was. Give them their money.
You probably don't want to do their job anymore, do you? You're tired. You're tired of trying to teach math and science classes, and trying to write papers.
All of it. Yeah, try to go over quantum. I don't understand this algebra. But enough about me. Let's talk more about you. Hey, I was admiring the background setup that you have here. So obviously, now that you're working from home, you kind of had to set it up to give a good appearance. And the picture that you have here, I believe that's over your left
Yeah,
shoulder.
yeah, it is.
Well, can you talk to me about that? It looks great.
Yeah, thank you. So this kind of setup here, like when you're talking work from home, I was like, I don't have the studio anymore. I don't have the camera and the lights and everything that our great staff does at Next Gen Warrior. So I have to figure out a way to, I have to make a background. I have to make it be consistent. And something that I've had, on the wall for years is this portrait, and it's called, I don't know, you probably not be able to see it, but it says Reflections right here. It has a POW and MIA flag right here. The American flag is propped up right here, and it's an older gentleman, maybe in his late 50s or early 60s, and he has his hand on the reflection wall in the Vietnam War Memorial in Washington, D.C. And behind all the names are the reflections of his buddies who died in service when he was serving there. And it's just a reminder to me that you can go about your life and try to live, the best way that you can, and try to serve and lead the people around you. But those lives are something you never leave them. They're always with you. And so I kind of think about it like he's gone through his entire day, and maybe the only thing that he was thinking through the entire day was he was thinking about his buddies that aren't able to do the things that he's able to do. Uh,
Yeah.
and so I know it's from a different generation, but I think that those are things that veterans, from regardless of what generation they are, um, you know, we have that understanding of what loss is like, especially at a very young age, when most people our age don't know what it's like to lose friends. And so that's why I have it here. I have it as a reminder to just have an appreciation for every single day that I'm given.
Yeah.
Uh, because that was taken away from those young men. And I think probably for you and for myself, had friends who were killed in combat, and don't get to enjoy the luxuries of daily life here in the United States. And so I keep that up there as just a reminder for myself to just never take anything for granted, and to always remember, people that I've served with.
Man, that I'll tell you, that's so cool. I had the privilege of going to Washington D.C.
Mhm.
and I've been to that memorial. And I mean, first of all, being there is so impactful. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just a heart tug. When you get there, you feel so like all those
Yeah,
people that aren't
I know.
there anymore. And so when I look at this picture and he's putting his hand on the wall, and it's all of those who aren't there with him anymore. And maybe you can speak to this a little bit. I know I can't personally, but I suffered from survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
I suffered from why am I here, and they're not, when I personally felt like these people who are gone, oh, they're so bigger than I. They had such a better, thought better path going for them than I felt for myself going. And it's like, man, why? So when I see this, I almost feel like, man, it could be easily put like, I mean, I'm like you said, I'm here and you're not, and this, I wish you guys were able to be here. It's so impactful, man.
Yeah, I think, I maybe wouldn't call it survivor's guilt for myself. I wouldn't necessarily put myself in that category, because we weren't in heavy combat. So the friends that I lost were either in different units or different platoons, or weren't deployed with me at that immediate time. But what I do feel is like, I think especially after I came back, and maybe you were this way too, I felt like my senses were heightened. Like, I remember coming back from Afghanistan and being like blown away by how green the trees were, because when we were in Western Afghanistan, man, it looked like Mars. And then like seeing like the sun come up or the sun go down and being like, man, Derek Wyatt is not going to be able to enjoy this. Or like somebody in his, in their family wishes that they were there to be able to watch this. And that's kind of how I process it for myself was, yeah, sometimes like, man, I'm lucky, I think is how I processed it. And then just like trying to appreciate every little moment, because I just remember like even being young, because like when we deployed, we were probably like early 20s, mid 20s, and to have, a life be taken away, it just made me be like, I have to appreciate how green the trees are and how beautiful a sunset is, because there were some guys who weren't even like a quarter of the way into their life that, didn't get to enjoy this. And I know that's a little bit different of an answer than what you asked, but maybe you kind of feel something similar.
Yeah, no, dude, I personally feel like everybody's going to have a similar experience, although it's different. If that makes sense. We're in the military, somebody who's died, or somebody who knows somebody who's lost a life, and it's such a close knit family. We're going to have those feelings. So yeah, no, I think you're spot on. And with that being said, I have two questions here for you. Question one: when did you get out of the military? And question two: what were your expectations for life outside of the military?
That's a great question. So I actually got out the first time in 2009. So I joined in 2005. I enlisted in Katy, Texas. I joined the Marine Corps. I was 18, went to boot camp like 2, 3, 4 weeks after walking off the podium for high school graduation. Just kind of wanted to leave that behind and move on and go take a different path. And after my 4 years, I was a little bit frustrated and wanted to just see what life outside of the military was like. I just wanted to know, instead of, because like when we were in Iraq, maybe it was similar to you in 2008, 2009, they were handing out crazy bonuses for dudes. So they were coming to us being like, hey, if you want to do a contract extension for 4 or 5 years, and remind you, I'm 20, I was like 21. They were like, we'll pay you $40,000 to come back and be an infantryman, lump sum, tax free, because you're in Iraq. Or if you want to go be in intelligence, or if you want to take a different billet, we'll give you upwards of like $70,000 to $8,000 lump sum, all this stuff, right? And so I remember thinking like, that would be really great, but I just want to know what it's like outside of this. I just want to know that I just want to go try. And if it doesn't work out, I can come back, and so I got out, but I didn't have a purpose. I didn't know necessarily why I wanted to get out, other than I just wanted to know what it was like to grow my hair out, to wear a white t-shirt around and not get yelled at, to walk around in flip-flops, to be like undisciplined, as the Marine Corps would say. And I got out and didn't like it. And I didn't care for the individual nature of American society, where it's not, you think less about your community and you think more about like what I need to do for Dan.
Right.
So I didn't adapt well to that. So I was only out for a year. So I got out for a year. I went to community college in Texas and at Blinn and College Station. And I just said, I'm not a healthy version of myself. So I'm going to go back to what I know. Like I said, when I got out, if it doesn't work out, I can go back. So I go back in, and I got out in June of 2009, and I went back in October of 2010. So I was out for maybe like 18 months. So I joined for another year with Alpha Company 123 in Houston, their reserve infantry unit in Houston. We did a quick workup out in California. We deployed to Afghanistan. I came back and dropped my pack and said, hey, I'm done with this. I really do want to go be a civilian. I just want to live however I want to live. And it worked this time. And this time, the second time, I knew what resources to access. So when I was struggling, I knew that I could reach out to the VA. I could reach out to counselors. I really wanted to go to school. So I started at ACC and then worked my way into University of Texas to get a bachelor's in government. And so the second time that I got out, it was an upward climb, but I had a little more focus. And I think I was a little bit more mature to just be like, okay, if I'm struggling, that's fine. It's natural to struggle. But I had a little bit more like stick-to-itiveness to get through the difficult times the second time I was out. And so I've been here in Austin for uh, 9 years now.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, you had a purpose when you got out the second time.
Yeah, man. And how long were you in for again?
I was in for 9 years.
9 years. Yeah. So it's like, I think I mean, if you think about yourself, if you would have gotten out at like 22 versus getting out at like maybe, man,
26, 27.
yeah, just a different kind of mindset, right? Where you know more about yourself, you know more about your surroundings, you're just a little bit more mentally or emotionally mature. And so I was still navigating it. It wasn't like I knew exactly what I was going to do, but it's kind of like I always think about the dartboard, right? I didn't know exactly I wanted to go into the bullseye. I just knew kind of like the area that I was trying to be in. And so I just kept throwing my dart in that area. And eventually it got closer and closer to the middle. And that ended up being going to ACC, getting into UT, and then graduating with a government degree.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean that's awesome. That dartboard example, that's how I am with women, man. I was just always out there, and then I realized, dude, I'm wrong all around. Let me circulate that, find out exactly what I'm looking for. Because you find a woman, you find a good thing, and there you go, right?
And stay with it. Yeah, it just takes a while to kind of hone it in.
Takes a while.
PZO, you know?
Yeah. So you went to ACC, and then you end up going to UT and getting your bachelor's degree. But now you're still with the UT Student Veteran Association. Is that right?
So I actually was the president of the Student Veteran Association when I was there, which was a key part of my transition. I'm not a part of the program and actively a part of the program now, but I still keep in touch with them. And, you know, the Student Veteran Association played such a huge role in my transition and give me that purpose. Like you were talking about earlier, man, once I found the SVA, I felt like I was kind of like a fish in water instead of feeling like a fish out of water. And so, you know, I appreciate everything the SVA does and what they do for veterans at UT.
Can you talk a little bit more on how you just explained you felt with the SVA, you felt more like a fish in the water as opposed to not being with the SVA, you felt like a fish outside of water?
Man, it's about that it's like, so to me, a lot of military transition is just about culture. It's just about a different culture. The military culture is very ingrained in us, regardless if you saw combat or if you didn't. But it's purpose driven. It's about working in a unit to accomplish a goal. And the goal is often not reflective of your own personal welfare, right? But when you get out of the military, especially on a college campus, people only care about getting after number one. You know, it was like, so when I reflect on that time, all I saw around me was like, I need to get to my class so that I can take my test, so that I can succeed in this class, so I can get my degree, and so that I can go get my job. And the people who were now like sitting to my left and the right, they didn't care. They didn't have that military culture that was like, it wasn't like standing up in front of the class and saying, hey, everyone in this class, we have to take this class together. It'll be a cumulative GPA, and then we'll all graduate together. And so I kind of felt like lost because there was not that community approach to success. It was only about individual success. So I walk into the SVA, and the Student Veteran Services at UT, Jeremiah Gunderson, Ben Armstrong played a huge role in my life by saying, all of a sudden I was surrounded by like-minded people. And even if they were in the Army, if they were in the Navy, if they worked on a submarine, all of a sudden I was like, oh, these people get me. And there wasn't anything wrong with the college students. They were doing what they were there to do. They had a different mission than I did. They had a different background. So I wasn't there to judge them. I needed to find the environment that I thrived in. And I didn't thrive in the environment of the college campus. I did, however, thrive in an environment where there were other veterans who had a similar understanding and background. And so And so once I got that group and I was lucky enough to be president of the SVA, I just said, hey, man, the thing that veterans need the most after getting out of the military, at least I think so, maybe this is true for you, was community.
Mm-hmm.
You can get veterans in community, then you can pool resources, you can meet people in different industries, you can leverage that group to do a lot of really good things. And for me, I was like, oh, now I'm finally doing something that's like taking care of other veterans. I'm taking care of other people besides just worrying about my test and that, or tests or exams and that sort of thing. So I don't know if you've gone through something similar like that, but I had to be in a group. You're an extroverted person, so you have to know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, most definitely, man. And a lot like you, I also needed the sense of community. And what interesting with what you said was you weren't taking care of yourself. You had the ability then to take care of other people like yourself,
Yes.
right? And that's so huge, because when I started Make a Vet Sweat, before Make a Vet Sweat, I didn't necessarily have that community. For me, I worked at a gym and I worked at Orange Theory Fitness, which is really, really good for building a fitness community, but I still felt like a fish out of water until I created Make a Vet Sweat to help not myself, but to help people like myself. And not until then did I feel like I was swimming rather than surviving.
Yes. Oh man, that's such a good way to put it. It's the difference between surviving and succeeding.
Yes, that's exactly it.
And then once you kind of get that taste of succeeding, I think like to turn it to like a personal and professional development conversation was, I think for me, I was like, okay, now I get what the blueprint is. You have to learn. I don't know if you've been watching The Last Dance, but I'm obsessed with Michael Jordan. So I've been watching The Last Dance on ESPN.
Oh man, we can talk so much about this. I'm telling you, that was an era of basketball that we just don't even get to see anymore.
I know, man. I'm like waiting every single day till Sunday evening, and I'm like, man, I can't wait to watch this. But okay, so I don't want to get too far off on tangent on Michael Jordan, but Michael Jordan had to develop like a blueprint for succeeding and for success. I think that's the same thing for you and I. Like when you made Make a Vet Sweat, all of a sudden you were like, hey, I'm succeeding. Now, how do I replicate this on a daily basis? And to me, that is the key to being successful after service is don't just survive, try to succeed. And once you succeed, try to find how to replicate it over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, and one thing, I'm sorry, you got on Last Dance. You were about to go on it for a second. Because, one of the key things that I watch when I watch Michael Jordan is his extreme ownership.
Yes.
That if you were going to be on the Chicago Bulls, you had to be on my standard. I'm not going to be on your standard. You're going to be on my standard. And you know why you're going to be on my standard? Because we're going to continue. It's not we're going to chase. We're hoping. No, we're going to continue to win these championships. The only way is by X, Y, Z. Michael Jordan had an ability to help everybody with their weakness and push them. And whether you like them or not, I can't be that mean all the time.
Yeah.
That's why. Crazy, right? I mean, he's definitely the greatest of all time, and I had to give him a couple of seconds.
Man, I'm the same way, man. I'm just like watching. I'm like, man, can I be like this? Like, I want to take some of that, but that man fought Steve Kerr and was doing all kinds of stuff, but he was maniacal. But that's what made him so great. So, yeah, it's fun to watch all that because the tenacity, right, is like something that is. I think from a military perspective, I'm like, oh, that's like what my sergeants wanted from me. That's what my drill instructors expected from me. They expected us to be perfect every single time. And if you weren't, for us, it was life and death. And for him, it was life and death was succeeding and winning a championship. So a little bit different different standards, but almost the same approach, right? I almost was like, that's just like when, staff sergeant, gets in your ass a little bit and tells you, you need to fix this, or the platoon, because that's how high the standards were.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I love watching that. I love watching it.
When this is over, I'm going to watch another episode. Just
Yeah.
remind me. Fill me in some more. So after Student Veterans Association, you're the president of UT. What happened next?
So I had a conversation with Ben Armstrong, who was the director of Student Veteran Services at UT, and he brings me into his office, and I would say I'm like half in the boat, half out of the boat at this point, trying to climb all the way in the boat, right? I'm going from struggling to succeeding. And I'm like half in and half out. And there was this organization at UT called the Clement Center for National Security. Ben Armstrong he sits me down, he goes, you need to apply for this undergraduate fellowship. And so they do a lot of international relations, they do public policy, they do everything that I've been interested in since I was in high school or junior high. For whatever reason, I either waited all the way to the deadline or I didn't think that I should apply. And he just sat me down and he was like, hey, you need to do this. And so he kicked me in the ass a little bit. And that's kind of sometimes what you need. So I applied to this undergraduate fellowship, and fast forward till that summer, I ended up going into their offices. I ended up volunteering. And if you're a veteran, you're listening to this at home, man, sometimes you just got to stick your neck out and go ask for things. I walked into their office one day and was like, I don't care if you pay me. I just want to be here and I want to learn, because I knew that the people affiliated with that organization were older than I were. They were smarter than I were. They had a bigger network of people than I did. And I wanted to learn from them. But I also wanted to be able to teach them too what it was like to be a Marine on the ground in Iraq or Afghanistan. So that it was a give and take, right? So they were talking about public policy. They were talking about national security. I went to go learn from them, but I also wanted the opportunity to try to explain what it's like to be an enlisted Marine in those combat zones. And I ended up becoming an undergraduate fellow with them and was a part of their inaugural class. And it put me in, it put me in the room with leaders. It put me in the room with national security leaders. It put me in the room for conferences with people who talked about things that I love. And when I had the opportunity to learn, but it was also around topics and conversations that were really stimulating to me, like you love fitness, right? So when you're a part of that community, you feel like 100% of yourself. And I went from being like half on the boat and half out of the boat to being like all the way in the boat, because I surrounded myself with people who were interested in the same things I were, and more importantly, they were a lot smarter than I were. So they could give me guidance, but I had to go ask for it. And that's really, that was a huge turning point in my life, was Student Veteran Association, learning how to lead, and then also walking into the Clement Center for National Security and being like, how do I be a part of this organization? How can I help you guys? Because I want to learn. And those two organizations played a huge role during my time at UT. And even now afterwards, I still keep in contact with them.
Yeah, you hit on a key thing there. Veterans have a hard time asking for help, or asking for just whatever it is that they need. And I think there has to be a balance, right? Like, I don't think you need to necessarily ask for everything. And, I understand that, but I think the balance is, I think you have to understand when you just need to ask. Hey, look, I don't know. I just don't know.
Yeah, it was hard for me to do that. I had to learn how to do it, and I'm still not sure that I'm good at that. But it was the difference between me struggling and me succeeding. Was just going like, hey, how do I do this? What's the best way to approach it? Like, how should I talk? How should I dress? What are the people around me? What are they reading? What are they consuming? When do they show up to meetings? When they talk to people, what are they talking about? So it wasn't even necessarily, I asked for help a couple times, but I was just curious. I was trying to find somebody to emulate. I had to
Yeah.
find someone to emulate. I don't know if you had like a similar experience, but the Clement Center allowed me to find people who were so much more advanced than I was, and it allowed me to try to emulate them in my personal life, in my professional life, and I think that added to that blueprint of success.
Yeah, and then so we're going to follow that blueprint of success,
Yeah.
right? And I was on Instagram, I was on Voices of Veterans, and I was looking on there. You guys have put together a lot of episodes so far.
Thank you for noticing that. Yeah, we're mid 20, and I appreciate you being a guest of ours because it's been fun, man. One thing that I never did at UT or as a student was, or have any background in, is broadcasting. I've never done any broadcasting other than I did like a little radio show where I talked about current events at UT, and that was it. And the commissioner, who was a Navy veteran and Afghanistan veteran as well, I sat down and talked with him and our staff at the Veterans Land Board and said, hey, we have this great program called Voices of Veterans. It's primarily focused on telling the war stories of veterans. But from what I had seen coming up through UT and then watching my friends grow after we left college, was there's a lot of veterans doing a whole lot of cool stuff after the military. And so I wanted to try to promote veteran success by replicating that blueprint for other veterans to see. So if you go on Voices of Vets, what you're going to see is veterans who are CEOs, veterans who are running nonprofits, veterans who are leaders and influencers in their community. And I don't know about you, but when I got out, there wasn't necessarily like a role model for veterans. I mean, there was like dudes that were like, big time war heroes and stuff, but I wanted to be able to find average and above average veterans who were just in their communities working, leading, and serving. And that has just been an awesome opportunity for me, and I feel blessed to be able to have the platform and the commissioner allowing us to tell these stories and to promote these stories for the Veterans Land Board. And yeah, we're in our mid 20s now, and we have a lot more stuff going. I mean, we have. I think it's going to get bigger from here. So stay tuned. Stay
Yeah,
tuned.
dude. I agree. I definitely see it growing bigger. I want to tell you, for you not having very much experience in broadcasting and so on and so forth, I think you're doing an amazing job with Voices of Veterans. I think the initiative is really, really smart. I think it's an amazing platform to bring me and other veterans to share their story and their successes with your platform. And so, man, I want to tell you, thank you for even creating the vision and having the go-getter mentality to go out and get it up and going, man.
Yeah, well, it's like, it's people like you who are in their communities and trying to combat PTSD through healthy ways of living and fitness. And I'm like, man, veterans are out here doing this stuff, man. They are solving the problems that need to be solved. And I want people to know about that. And maybe you feel this way too. I kind of get upset sometimes because veterans either are kind of like pigeonholed into like the hero mentality or the victim mentality. And I wanted people to see like the professional and personal development side of veterans. And so that was kind of like another motivator for this. And hopefully we can keep telling these stories, because I want folks who are on active duty, if they're going to be getting out in the next 6 months or a year or two, to be able to go watch your story and then try to emulate that success and use your blueprint for success, and try to take some skills and take some lessons learned from your story or from my story, and then hopefully make their transition more successful.
Absolutely, Dan. If there was one thing that one piece of advice, this is way off the cuff, right? So
No, let's do it.
catching you off guard. One piece of advice that you could give to a college student who used to be in the military, so a veteran out of the
Yeah.
military, currently in college, what would your one piece of advice be to that student?
My piece of advice would be, and I heard this when I was in school, is make sure you're never the smartest person in the room. And if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So go find the professors, go find academic advisors, go find campus leadership, and go learn from those people and just learn everything you can from them. Soak it up, because a lot of times people on campus look for veterans to be leaders. So you may have to step up and take a leadership role. But in the times when you're not in a leadership role, make sure that you go find the smartest person in the room and just learn as much as you can about life or about academics or about professional development that you can. Because the more people that you put around yourself, you'll insulate yourself from difficult times. And I think you'll really help yourself in the long run as you kind of grow and build a social network and a professional network.
Right. And one thing also, and you kind of mentioned in your story, is not only will you learn so many different things, you also can get pushed out of a comfort zone that you don't even see yourself being in. You told the story of how you waited and probably until the last minute to turn this application. And then the commander brought you in and said, hey, man, you need to go do this. And by doing that, it only excelled you into a whole nother comfort zone of being around people that you know, smartest people doing the things that you love. Dude, you're so spot on. So important to be around people that are smarter than you, that are doing great things. That energy, it takes you far beyond what you thought you could do on your own. Next thing you know, you got 20 some odd episodes.
I know, it's crazy, man. It's the path is never like how you imagine it to be, but when you look back, it's fun to see how it's developed.
Right. Well, hey, Dan, do you have any last words or anything before we cut this one?
Well, thanks for taking my role, man. You're good at this. We might have to make Voices of Veterans 2, the Justin Bohannon show.
Hey, guys, I'm all about it. Yeah, just let me know when I can be a part of this. I thought this was one of my best experiences. I've never interviewed somebody before, so this is my first time interviewing. And just like you, I've never had any experience with this in the past. And so doing this today was a great experience, man. You're a great person to kind of guide me through it, man. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks for stepping in the role, and I'll close it out here real quick. And hey, before we do, can you let people to know where they can find Make a Vet Sweat at and keep up with everything that you've been doing here in the community in Texas?
Absolutely. And please, during this pandemic, things aren't as what they used to be, right? So Make a Vet Sweat, please go to makeavetsweat.org. That's our website, or at Make a Vet Sweat. And that's our Instagram, and kind of follow along what we have going on. Typically, we would have a year of scheduled events and activities and fundraisers, but now, because we don't have that, it's so vital and important that if you do want to donate to help veterans, or if anybody out here watching that wants to donate to help veterans, to click continue to donate, continue to help us excel and help other veterans that also are in need. Because during this time with no gyms, you got to know how to work out at home, or you got to get motivated to still stay active, because more than ever, social distancing doesn't necessarily help the veteran with PTSD that needs a community, that wants to swim in a pool of water, not get stuck outside of that water. So we appreciate any support that any of the followers watching this would like to provide for us. We really help. We love it.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin. Well, I have a feeling that this won't be the last time that we're on the show together, man. So thank you again for letting me tell my story. And, I appreciate Commissioner Bush too, supporting the Voices of Veterans show. And on behalf of Chairman Bush and the Texas Veterans Land Board, you've been watching my man, Justin Bohannon, interview myself, Dan Hamilton. We'll see you next time.
Follow us on Instagram at Voices of Vets, on Twitter at Voice of Veterans, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Voices of Veterans. To hear more, please visit voicesofveterans.org. Join us in sharing the success stories of Texas veterans. Thank you for joining us for the Next Gen Warrior podcast.